raucous crowd. They all seem like they're in good spirits.
Well, we'll see what kind of questions they have. We'll
Yeah.
see if they stay awake during the talk.
I think they're going to stay awake. I'm not
Okay.
The tech people said yes?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to
Yeah.
do it.
Okay. Oh, and I can hear that yeah.
Hello. Hello. Hi. If everyone can get settled, we can get going.
Do you need this?
No, I'll just yell.
Okay.
Good afternoon, and thank you for coming to today's Davis Family Lecture. My name is Sylvan Leone. I'm the Director of Undergraduate Studies at the Director of Undergraduate Studies for the Department of Art located within the School of Art and Design and the College of Design. I have the very special pleasure of introducing today's speaker, B. Wurtz. First, though, I should tell you that today's lecture is made possible by the generosity of Gay and Judy Davis, who funded the Davis Family Art Endowment here in the College of Design. Mr. and Mrs. Davis are both graduates of the University of Oregon, as are their two daughters, Anne and Marie, and they are wonderful supporters of our students, and we'd like to thank them for the opportunity to bring such incredible artists and lecturers every year. B. Wurtz lives in an historic federal-style building in Lower Manhattan, and a number of years ago, I was lucky enough to find myself in his basement studio along with a group of 15 University of Oregon students. B's work is largely comprised of exactly the kinds of banal objects you might find in just about any basement. Bits of wire, tin pans, blocks of wood, plastic bags. But B has a unique ability to reassign value to the things you find in a basement. A way of seeing things unexpectedly, of finding treasure in the trash. It's not a new idea, but remaking the ready-made is. His work tickles as it elevates the most ubiquitous found objects. He gives us a magnifying glass through which to more closely inspect and appreciate the everyday. But maybe just as importantly, I think of B in the lineage of artists whose reputations are augmented by their kindness, generosity, and interactions with the younger generation of artists. He is considered something of a New York treasure, with a selflessness that is rare in the art world. Perhaps a form of activism, maybe even an art form in itself. B has had solo exhibitions at Feature Inc. in New York City, Richard Tellis in Los Angeles, at the University of Illinois in Chicago, the Suburban when it was still in Chicago, Metro Pictures, Gregor Podnar in Berlin, Mary Boone, the Aldrich Contemporary Art Museum, Office Baroque in Brussels, among many others. He has been included in exhibitions at Tibor Denage, Artist Space, the Renaissance Society, Andrea Rosen, the Santa Monica Art Museum, the Corcoran, the Art Institute of Chicago, PS1, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Barbara Gladstone, Leo Koenig, the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago, Moderna Museet in Stockholm, Palais de Tokyo in Paris, among many, many, many other national and international venues. Honestly, I've listed them all. We'd be here till midnight. I should also mention that tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, B and his wife Anne are performing at Ditch Projects in Springfield, next town over. Please help me in welcoming B. Wurtz.
Thank you, Sylvan. Everyone can hear me? It sounds like it. Yes? Yeah. Thank you for that really nice introduction. I feel like I can just show the images. I don't need to say anything more. But kind of summed it all up. I'm very happy to be here, and I hope we're going to have questions at the end. So I think we're going to have to wait till the end. Sometimes I like it while the image is up, but you're going to have your microphone. So we'll wait to the end. We'll see if there are any questions. Is this how long do these run? Usually like hour, including the questions, right? So I'm not going to worry about. I think will be fine. amount of stuff I have. So we'll go to the first image. It's pretty clear when that was done, 1973. It's about, this is 29.5 inches high by 23.5 inches. I'm going to refer to the dimensions once in a while because it's not always easy, to look at a piece of art and know how big it is. And I think it is interesting, especially when you've misread the size of something. So that's work on paper. And I remember distinctly making that work. I had really developed a big interest in conceptual art when I made that. And clearly I was starting to think about what became kind of the major theme of my work, which is ordinary things from daily life. And I made those three categories, and then it's worth staying on this for a while because this is kind of almost a key to my art over the years. I had worked with found things like when I was in high school, and my earliest works as a child were drawings, and my dad had a workshop in the garage where he made furniture and things. He gave me little blocks of wood, scraps, which I glued together to make houses, drew doors and windows on them. Those were my first sculptures. So those were kind of my beginnings. But at this point, a text piece, I was thinking about conceptual art. But what happened was I mentioned the found objects. At one point I realized if I was going to use found objects, I needed to limit them. It was too much to deal with, and also if something was already kind of interesting in itself, there wasn't really anything I could add to it. So that's why I gravitated to the really throwaway ordinary things from our lives, which often do fit those categories. Food wrappers, and I use socks a lot. And keeping warm. I do have a big interest in architecture, so I think architecture comes into my work. Anyway, I think that's kind of enough on that. Let's go to the next one. This is from a series called Slide Cubes from 1979, and those are they're not like enlarged. Those are real 2-inch slides. But then there's something kind of also monumental about it. I remember when I made them that I thought about Donald Judd sculptures, and so the monumentality is something that comes up a lot through a lot of the work. A monumental attitude, even if not a monumental scale, that really intrigued me. And so, yes, I thought it was those were found slides. I had a friend who worked in advertising, and he gave me this whole bunch of slides they didn't need. And when you look at that, because they're kind of blocking all their light, you can't really see the images. So I kind of like that kind of mystery that you could kind of barely see what the image was. And that it was sort of secondary to this little minimalist sculpture. Okay, this is from 1982. Let's see, Untitled. That piece is kind of about the individual and the rest of society. So there's all those images on the left, advertising, politics, whatever. Looks like you got religion there, all these symbols. And on the right, those are all actual doodles that I copied from, I would often doodle, like especially when I was in college, I doodled all the time on my notebooks. So those are doodles, and know thyself is something I've been really interested in, the philosophical, what that means philosophically. And what I know about it is I remember it was on above a door of a Greek temple. It's a big tenet of philosophy, know thyself. And I think has a lot to do what I'm trying to do with my art too. Okay, we're going to move on to another series of works. This one's from 1986. This is a pretty big series that I did called the nickname is Photo Objects. And this one, yeah, this is untitled, but often I put nicknames in parentheses to identify. This one says grater, but that is not a grater. I thought it was a cheese grater, but it's actually a toaster. I found that years later. You put it on a campfire and lean your bread against it. I like it when even my own art surprises me. Like, but anyway, the idea of this series was that I would make these little sculptures that had some kind of architectural look to me, and then I would photograph them outdoors, looking up as if looking up at a building or something. My wife Anne used to help me by holding these outside while I photographed them. And also what's interesting, I'm a big believer in doing things you don't know how to do, because you're free to not follow cliches of how other people do it. So I remember when I started this, I thought, well, I've taken photos, but I don't really know how to, I'm not a photographer. And I thought, well, let's just see what happens. If it looks like I was driving by in a car and it was all blurry, maybe that would be fine. But then they were surprisingly kind of professionally like an architectural photographer. It was kind of interesting that happened. Anyway, so I have a few more of those to look at. This one's called Bogan Challengers, in parentheses. Bogan Challenger, that's a amplifier, and it has that name on it. And those are just, probably found them on the street, furniture legs. But then it had this funny kind of, looked like a factory, almost like the Beckers a bit. I'm thinking, yeah. This one's I called this one Horn. I'm not sure what that is. I felt like I found that on the street in front of our apartment in New York. I think it might be a truck horn. I'm not sure though, but when I'd photograph them, I loved when there were cloudy days. And that was a really good cloudy day. This one I called Container, and I found out many years later, I think that's really not so many years ago, I think that's something they put in the ocean to keep bait in. Does that sound like I think that's what I heard it was, but anyway, is that one? Okay, this is called, again, these are all untitled, but I'm calling it Four Views. And that's just a broken piece of cinder block that I photographed. I showed at a gallery in New York early on, and they managed to lose, in their storeroom, they managed to lose that piece of cinder block. And I thought, oh, the piece is ruined. I can't make it. And I think I got insurance money. I mean, I had to have. And I was starting to work with Hudson in Chicago then, and he helped me. And he had just moved to New York, and he helped me figure out how to deal with this. But then what's weird is I thought, well, I can't just throw this piece out. So I found another piece of cinder block, not the same one. And I thought, well, is that kind of cheating? But it just kind of became another work, and no one ever noticed that it wasn't the same piece. I know that's all such an interesting story about that, how that piece went through time. Anyway, okay, so what's this we have? Oh, I know what this is. Oh, no, I don't. Okay, that's just untitled. That's not too big, 12 inches high, 28 and a half wide. And that's sort of a little conglomeration of my three categories: food, clothing, and shelter. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have much more to say. I think that is pretty much what it is. And this one's called Tower. A couple of found table, well, there is a whole table at the bottom, those legs at the top, and then I constructed the central part out of plywood, which I thought of that was the Donald Judd section of the tower. But also that's another example of what I'm talking about, my interest in the monumental. But that's also not that, let's see, how tall is that? 50 inches tall. It's not a huge piece. This is, yes, untitled, but it's pretty much all there. Now, we had a cat at the time I made that, and I remember one day looking at her. She's probably sleeping on the bed, and that really came to me, that thought about the cat. So I made this kind of crazy piece, and it was actually in a group show at White Columns called The Cat Show. It's pretty good. And so that's actually not very big. That's only roughly 12 inches square. It's not quite square. 12 by 12 and 3/4. And I did, and this is from 1990. Those other works were all the photo objects. Those were all through the 80s. 87 was the last few, but the cat purchase, at the time I was thinking about re-looking at abstract expressionism, because it was sort of, it was like just something left from the past, and that's what kind of drove me to make that little, I made that with my fingers, finger painting. Anyway, well. This one's called Look at Yourself, from 1990. It related to the cat piece. It's just a plywood board that I did finger painting on, and then I wiped my fingers on the canvas piece on the left, and the rest is just like clothing parts or a sock and the tin cans. I made like, this was a series of like 4 or 5 of these types of works. They all had some kind of philosophical name like that. But there was something that intrigued me about their kind of aggressiveness. They were kind of ugly in a way that kind of intrigued me. But then not really ugly, because I like that kind of ugly beauty duality. Ugly, beautiful. Okay, we're going to go to the next page. Okay, this is from another little series I did called Life Paintings. This is also 1990. It's acrylic on paper. That one's actually only 12 by 9. There were various sizes, none huge. And so those to me were sort of a combination of minimalist color field painting with this face, but it's not a face. It's a oval with 4 letters in it. But I was thinking, I'd read that babies, the first thing that a newborn baby sees, or when it can start to see, is its mother's face abstracted as kind of just dark eyes and mouth. And so I thought it'd be interesting to make these faces, which I said aren't faces, but we read them that way. And also, because they're all hand done, every one is different, just like every human face is different, even though we all have eyes, nose, and mouth. Anyway, that was, and it was also just a way to make sort of these colored, minimal paintings. There's another one. Okay. This is a quite large work. This is 112 inches square. And I got the idea for that work. That's actually a part of a speaker facing backwards onto the, that's an actual artist's palette that hangs on the front. And then it's loose canvas on the wall. And I had been to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and they have the contemporary or modern contemporary in the kind of the back of the building. And there was a big room, and basically everything in the room was a really large painting. I mean, I'm not against large paintings by any means, but they were all big, large paintings, and they all felt like they were saying that to me. Pay attention to me. No, mine's better. Pay attention to me. So that's what gave me the idea for that. Okay, here we're going to come to another ongoing series that I call the pan paintings. Yes, I have here listed the dates, 1991 through the present, because they do continue to keep making new patterns on the bottom of those aluminum pans. And sometimes my friends tell me, "Oh, I saw this one. I've never seen this. Like, should I get you some?" And so, but I don't know. The way that started, obviously in 1991, we probably got some kind of takeout food. I remember it was just a little round one, and oh, yes, I remember now why I kept it. It was before city recycling, but there was a place you could take your stuff over in the West Village, like by West 4th Street, subway station. It's a place where you could take stuff and to start recycling. And I really, I've always hated waste, and so I was really into trying to recycle these, but that's probably why I really noticed, because I'd washed it and I was going to put it, and take it over there. But so when I noticed it, I thought, well, there's like a ready-made composition that someone designed. Some person designed all of those, and I tried to do research online. There's never any credit to who came up with those patterns, but it was like a sort of Duchampian, and like, oh, here's this thing with a ready-made composition, but then I got to pick the colors, and that was like the really fun part. It's still the fun part. And the first one, I thought, oh, I guess I should put gesso on it and then put the paint on, and then I realized very quickly the paint was going to stick just as well as the gesso. So anyway, so that's how the whole thing started, and here's a few more views. And when there was text, which is, you read it when you're looking down into the pan, I would paint in where the text was, but it would all be backwards because it's the bottom. But then I decided, well, a lot of them have text, so I'm going to put my name and the date as more textual information. So all of them I sign and date them. Okay, here's another, we're back to Know Thyself. I made this is from 1992. Yeah, I guess I really am, I like socks for several reasons. And one is that I like how we all have our socks, but we step on them, we don't look at them, they like serve us in this very loyal way. They're and they are kind of fantastic too. There's many socks with great patterns on them, but it just fit into that sort of know thyself, I guess, related to like gazing at your navel or something. Just know thyself at the most basic level. Your socks or something. Anyway, and then they also. Okay, the other thing I liked was that when I put them on either side like that, on this loose, this is actually linen, they became like curtains on a little stage too. And there's Know Thyself. That's the little play taking place or something. I think I'm doing okay on time. We're just beginning. Okay, this is from 1993. This is actually a picture of a prototype for a sock multiple, which I did make a multiple later. And again, I thought of it as the three categories: the wood representing shelter, then the can for food, and the sock for clothing. And again, that's its other nickname, the sock monument, because I think it's very monumental. Some people would see those pieces and thought the sock was actually made out of marble, like Brancusi. Because it's like, it's got a kind of importance to, the way it's there, just very proud of being a sock. But there was formal things I liked about this piece too, which is these parallel lines. The sock has ribbing on the top going up and down. Then the can has those lines going back and forth. Then the wood grain is going up and down again. And then the plywood, it's going back and forth. And I just really like that. I'm really into once I move beyond the found objects, which carry their own subject matter, because I never hide what they are, then what I enjoy is just the formal things, figuring out what I'm going to add to them to make these sculptures. So I'm really pretty much of a formalist in many ways. Okay, here's this is called Bunch, and I believe that's the first one. I made a few in that series, not too many, but I think that was the first one. That's from 1994. That's 87 inches high. And the first plastic bag I used, this is a long time ago. It doesn't carry this. They kind of now have a different subtext, which is that we're buried and poisoned by plastic. At the time, which I totally accept when time changes meaning in art, but at the time it was just the most overlooked ordinary thing I could think of. But they were also kind of cool because they had these interesting colors and text or images. So I somehow just got this idea of making almost like a big bouquet of flowers, or almost like a tree with these. So that was the idea behind making these. And I did show one. I think this one was shown fairly recently at my gallery in New York, Garth Green, and they did a kind of my first show with them. This is after Metro Pictures closed. I was very lucky to get another gallery that I like. But they're plastic bags. It's like they kind of look exactly like when I made it. I mean, that's the thing about plastic. And then I think, well, at least those aren't in the ocean, at least yet. You know, hopefully my piece won't get thrown in the ocean ever. But so, yeah, I kind of dealt with some plastic in a way. This one is called 24 Screws from 1994, and there are 24 screws, some sticking out of the bottom, and that, again, that's fairly small. That's 16.25 inches high, and a bit related to the photo objects. It's kind of architectural, like a little pyramid or monument or something, made out of just a lot of scrap wood and stuff. It was fun. It was almost like playing with blocks as a child, which was, I would say, my favorite toy as a child. Okay, here's another large one. This is from 1994, called Green Basket number 2, and that's 304.8 inches square. And there is a little green, like, berry basket in the middle, and there's socks and God, it's hard to see what. Yes, another artist palette. I knew there was an artist palette. And then the painting is all just taken from shapes and colors of the stuff in the middle. So it's sort of like the painting grew out of what's in the middle. And it's funny because it's sort of related that pay attention to me, but it's sort of like pay attention to me, like all these ordinary things from our life, pay attention to me, because we're important too. This one's called Umbrella Handle, which is a little abstract, but if you look at the dowel at the top and the little cord that's holding it, that shape, and then you look at the rope hanging down, it makes a shape of an umbrella. And the rope is going into a plastic bag, obviously, and then actually this is a good one to talk about because I feel like a lot of the wall works I've made, this type of sculptural work is basically another form of drawing for me, and that was one of the, like I said, one of the first things I did as a child was to drew. I don't do a lot of drawing now, but I feel like the drawing didn't go away, and I think it appeared in a lot of these things where the string and shoelaces and things becomes a form of making a drawing, a way to make a drawing. Here's another bag tree. This one is from 1997. And those are blue recycling bags, obviously, which I think everyone pretty much knows how big those are. And then the bottom, those are circular. I think I took the circular shapes from kind of thinking of the bag opened, as if the top was made into a circle. And I think I put 9 there for the planets. I don't know, I have these funny little reasons I do things. I don't think it's so important. It's really just sort of a something visual. Okay, let's go to the next one. Oh, here's another one of those sculptural wall pieces I was talking about. It's from 1997 also. It's pretty much obvious what it is, except that it is a little piece of canvas painted red that I attached to the plywood. And it almost, my wife Anne called that the Comme des Garçons piece, I think, because it's almost like a piece of clothing in a way. The bag sort of looks like one. Here's another one with a shoelace and a sock and a square of painted red. Another one. This one has, those are twist ties on the end of the little wire thing, and I believe, yeah, it's just some cord tied to the bottom, and also the same cord that's holding it on the top, that's where it's attached to the wall. And a found piece of ply. I really like found pieces of wood. And sometimes they have things written in pencil, like where they're at a building site, the builders or somebody wrote down things. I love the ones that have pencil writing on them. This is, that's a cutting board. Plastic bags underneath, kind of on that little shelf bottom part at the bottom, and then I cut sections out of them and made the top part, which is, I think, kind of related to Calder, at least in my mind, who was important to me as a child. I was very into Calder, and I think that's a lot of why I like to use so much wire. Yeah, this is shoelaces and a found board. There's another one. That's shoelaces and also just the black cord also. It's hard to see. I think that has pencil notations on it as well. Yeah, I can see them, at least from here. Okay, next, that's called collection number 10 from 1999. It's one of those things you dry your socks with. And the images are, so they're unmounted 35 millimeter slides, and I made a lot of pieces with these slides hanging like this, some big ones. And they were, one of my day jobs was mounting slides for Hoke Celanese Fabric Company. I don't even know if they, I mean, that used to be a big company. I don't know if they're around anymore, but I would go every once in a while, and they would have sent out a photographer to all the fashion shows and taken photos of the runway models, and it was all about whatever fabric they were interested in trying to sell at the moment. It was related to the fabric. And then when I'd go back there to redo them, we would use the same glass and plastic slide mounts, and I'd remount new images. And after a while I thought, well, I'm not going to throw these out. I saved them. I got a huge number of them. And I thought, so this is kind of my clothing. Yeah, they're clothing, even though it was fancy clothing. And this was also the era, I don't know if people even know now, this was the era of the supermodels. So a lot of those images are people like Naomi Campbell, Linda Evangelista, those kind of people are, a lot of those have them in the images. But yeah, so that's that piece. Now we're going to go to a series of button paintings. This is from 1999. This is actually not too big of one. This is 24 by 26. And so the idea from these, so it's loose canvas. You can see it's just attached with loops at the top. And it's a piece of cloth, which is where buttons normally are. So I sewed buttons on them. And then I made the composition from the circles of the buttons, and then the straight lines, which are always like horizontal and vertical. Those were related to the weave of the canvas. So, and then the rest was just whatever I wanted to play with regarding color and composition. So we'll go to another one. Yeah, that's a bigger one. Let's see if I... Yeah, that one's 48 by 48. Not that much bigger, but bigger. Anyway. So there's those. And then the next one is... What time is it?
4:48.
Okay, we got to wrap up. Sorry. I don't want to keep you here too long. And I hope we have questions. But so we're going to pick up the pace a little. And I think I kind of covered a lot of what I'm about in those earlier pieces. So let's just kind of look at some work here. So that's pretty clear. I'm really drawn to those net bags that fruit and vegetables come in, mostly fruit. This is a series of pieces with collaged elements from those things which still are around, which still look like the 1950s. Those new grocery store weekly specials with the fruits and vegetables and how much they are per pound. So it's sort of like a vertical sentence with those. And then I have these. Here's another one. The yogurt lids, because I wanted a circular element in the composition, so I started using a lot of lids, and then the yogurt is often has a expiration date. So I'm interested in time, a lot of my work. And these also, I think, some of them I put the time on them or the days of the week. I think I started with the days of the week, and then I would pick arbitrary times. So here's a little grouping of them. Yeah, where are those from? I don't know. I'm just going to kind of go through here because here's another one made with plastic bag and a cutout part of a plastic bag. A little bit, I was really interested in bonsai, Japanese bonsai. I had a friend who studied it, a school friend, and I learned from him that this is like a serious art form. It's not just sticking flowers in a vase. And I was kind of, I think some of these works are kind of inspired by bonsai. Here's one with just different plastic bags and a piece of silk, I think, on there. Here's one which I did a lot of these things where this is a hook and eye that aren't meeting, and I did also a series of barrel boats like mounted on a piece of wood where they can't meet. Like they never lock. Here's a fairly big one with plastic bags and clothespins. Oh, okay, here's one very much related to a piece that's at S.E. Cooper Contemporary right now that made out of cut out pieces of plastic bags, and that one actually says you. This one says now. But when I made the words, I didn't want it to be too obvious. And I remember one of these was in the office at Feature, and this is a gallery I showed it years ago, and Hudson said, oh, I just noticed today that word in there. He'd like been looking at it for, I don't know, quite a while. So, and we didn't notice the one at Derek's gallery. I didn't notice it either until all of a sudden, it said you. But that's kind of what was fun about making it not so obvious. Here's another one. I think this is another inspired by bonsai. Here's one. This is a floor element and a hanging element, so this kind of moves in the wind. Here's another of this series. This one actually doesn't say anything, but bags and then cut up bags. This is, it's hard to see that, but there's a white cord hanging down that makes that curve by gravity. I forget the name of it. But, yeah. This is from a little series called Fetishes. They're pretty small. And the bottoms are all marble from this, trophies that no one wanted. And I thought, marble's kind of not something I really use, but I like that marble. Marble, that art material. So that's the basis of all of these. But then the rest is pretty ordinary stuff of it. This is a piece I made at Dieudonné, the paper mill where they do artist projects. It's pretty big, and it's not actually a paper bag, but it's based on a paper bag. We made the paper to be the same color. We made the handles, and then we silk screened. Those are from scans from actual paper bags, except for my name and the date, which is more information, which like you find on plastic paper bags. Sorry, definitely not plastic bag. This is from a series where I don't know, one day I was in Blick Art's store and I saw these little packages of panels, and I thought, oh, I got to do something with those, and it took me a while, but then I decided I just stretch those things over it and make these little, not really paintings, but sort of sculpture paintings. Okay, now we're going to show you, I did a public art fund project. I never saw that coming, but someone invited me to submit a proposal, and I was really happy. It was a good collaboration. I feel like I made it work. They were really big, but I felt like they were my work somehow. And I said, and I told them they had to be fabricated. I mean, I picked out like the pots and pans and the colanders, but I said I want all the nuts and bolts to show. And that, I think, really helped it be like my work. And I loved how the wire, the arms of the trees, they're called kitchen trees, that they they mimic the fountain. It's like, I didn't see that till we were installing it. Okay, here's a big piece that I thought of as a kind of a bit related to Donald Judd, a big cube, but with all this ordinary stuff attached to it or coming out of it. Here's one. This is from a series of photographs I took of towels hanging on towel racks, and then I made these little, and it's printed on kind of synthetic silk, and then I made the way to display it was sort of a little rack thing. Here's one. Yes, I can see we're getting near the end. I think I'm doing okay with the time. This one's made out of old lamp parts, and I don't know, those were around my studio, and I made like another little sort of architectural thing out of it. I don't know what, with nails coming out of the little dowels. I don't know, it just kind of is what it is. This one is called Octave. Those are parts of an old piano, and there are 8 of them. And that is a part of a sound sticks, which is, I think that design is in the MoMA collection, but it broke, and I called the company, and nope, we don't repair those. Like, so American, throw it out, get another one. And I thought, well, I'm going to make something out of it. So I made something out of the bass part, and then I think a couple of young artists were visiting me, and I had this little treble parts, and they wanted them for something. Maybe they used them. So I thought, okay, well, we dealt with that broken thing. It didn't end up in the landfill, at least. Okay, so speaking of music, so I'm showing this. This is a first album I did with Hen House Studios of songs I wrote, and I did the cover, and there were too many songs for a single vinyl record and not enough for a double, so we did 3 sides of music, and the 4th side is this, which you spin, and it's sort of like one of those Duchamp rotor reliefs. It kind of goes, you can imagine like it's spinning on the turntable. This is a fairly recent work where I kept saving the stickers on all the fruit, and I scanned them. And this is, God, how big is this? 60 inches high, so it's fairly big. So just enlarge them, and it's printed on clear I think it's like sort of like very thin, flexible plexiglass almost. So I did a series of those. And then we're going to go to a book project I did with Tuto Press in Australia. Really, they do great artist books. So these were actually the original pieces, all collages of ordinary stuff with acrylic paint that I added and scanned to make the book, which I'll show you the cover. And then I had a show at Office Baroque in Antwerp, and they were framed. The original pieces were shown. So here's some more, a couple more. And then here's the cover of the book, and that's the title also. And the book also had these little, there were pages with these little things I wrote down. I would overhear things on the street, and I'd remember them and write them down and save the little pieces of paper. So that's something I overheard someone say on the street. Here's some more sock pieces from a show at Lulu in Mexico City that Chris Sharp had. He now has a gallery in Los Angeles. So the very last few slides are a few little installation shots from different places, because I'm always interested in art when it's installed, what happens to it. And usually I defer to other people who know their spaces or it's fun for me to see how people install my work. Here's the ICA Los Angeles show, 2018, part of it. This is just one room. And Jamila James curated that, and I basically let her pick the work and install it, which was very fun for me. And then this one, last slide is from my show a couple of years ago at Garth Green in my new gallery in New York. And I see now that is a little bit a later tree, the bag tree. It's not, I don't know where the first one is, but yeah, a little bit later. And then you see to the right, you see the kind of paper bag piece, a wall of smallish pieces on the back. And then on the left, you see one of the ones from the fruit stickers. So that is the end. It is already 3 after 5, but I think we could have a few questions. So, all right. Yeah. Hi.
What strikes me about your work is that it is so urban.
Urban.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
And
yes.
Well, at first I was thinking about Kurt Schwitter's, how he would go and he would find things on the ground, and that's how he would collect the stuff that he created for his collages. And so I'm wondering, like, is it that, and it seems like, do you get a lot of your pieces by picking up garbage in cities, or are you inspired by the detritus that you will observe? Like I see socks on the street all the time, and bags. And so these are things that come up, and I'm not trying to say this in a way to make your work seem ordinary. I think it's transformative. And so I'm wondering about the process of collecting these things.
I like that it's ordinary.
Well, I do too.
Yeah, but that's an interesting question because I do pick up stuff on the street, but I started sort of limiting that. Also because I'd pick up stuff and I was like, well, then I have to keep it till I did something.
Right.
But I do kind of have a little cleanliness thing. No, I would not pick up a plastic bag on the street. There's plenty to come my way anyway.
Right.
But you saw in some of those photo object pieces, clearly I found a lot of that stuff on the street. So it's sort of a combination, but I just feel like, God, I mean, it's interesting your comment about, did you say urban?
Yes, I think it's.
But nowadays, with like things like plastic bags, they're everywhere.
Right.
It's not like rural things I would find other objects. It's like that's America now.
Right.
Well,
I guess part of it is that like the bags that you collect have certain kinds of qualities that like they're not standard bags.
That's a really good point because here's my relationship with Duchamp.
Right.
Duchamp, and I do not believe him, but it was important he said it. He said he wanted to use no personal taste in the ready-mades.
Right.
Well, we know that's not true, but it's an interesting thing to say, and he needed to do that then. I do use personal taste, and I don't, and I'm proud to say it. I don't care. I do pick them because, well, once in a while I'll pick a bag because it's really ordinary, because that's what I want.
Right.
But often it's like, oh, I like that color, though that's unusual. No, I do use personal taste. And so I think, yeah, you really picked up on that. I don't close my eyes and point to a plastic bag.
Yeah. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
because I used to collect plastic bags
Yeah.
like this, and I got rid of them when I moved. But I
you-
found like weird ones from all over the world.
Yeah, and you and I someday, because I have bags, big bags of these, which I don't know if I'll use them, but maybe they'll end up in an archaeology museum way in the future. Oh, I think we need to, it looks like we really need, people need to go do stuff. Are there any other urgent questions? I mean, not urgent. Are there any other questions? Let's just say that. Oh, there's a question.
Hi, thanks for your talk. I was wondering why you don't use your handwriting as much, your cursive writing in the more contemporary work.
Oh, in the more recent work?
Hmm.
Oh, that's an interesting question. Thinking. God.
Seems like
kinda
you use
stumped me.
capital.
I'm thinking, why don't I? Now maybe I'm going to get inspired to start doing something with that.
Start referencing your early
And
work.
I have a kind of funny writing too, because I'm left-handed, so it's all backwards for me. And but in that triptych where I put "Know Thyself" in my own writing, and then the other side I put like block letters, sort of. God, I don't know what the answer, but I'm now intrigued about why I'm not. I'm thinking, did I do anything recently? No, you really got me thinking. Thank you for that question.
No problem.
Actually. Okay, it looks like we answered the questions. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah.